Hey everyone, welcome back to Ken Michaels Radio, where we talk all the time about the Beatles. There's so many things to talk about where they're concerned. The years together, the solo years, Beatle news, you name it. We're welcoming back, actually, this is the first time he's on my channel, but I interviewed him back in 2019 when he put out this book right here called NEMS, and the business of selling Beatles merchandise in the US 1964 to 1966. He knows all about that material here, and you can probably tell just from everything that's right behind him, that's only just a small percentage of what he collects on the Beatles, but we welcomed him back to my shows, and that's Terry Crain.
Ken, I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me on. This is fun kind of stuff we get to do.
Yeah, it also gives me a chance to connect with all the people that I didn't get to see at the fest.
We were all busy, no problem
Yeah.
there.
I know it's crazy those 3 days, but you put out a book recently, the end of last year, and it's called Copyrighting the Beatles. And just from reading the description in Amazon, it's like you're tackling everything that requires a copyright, so it seems, where the Beatles name is concerned. Tell us about how you started doing this and what gave you the idea to do it.
What happened to me was when I was researching the NIMS book that you showed up, uh, I was looking out there for the U.S. items
Hmm.
that actually had copyrights also. I knew there was about 150 U.S. items that were licensed, and some of them besides being licensed by NIMS, they went a little bit farther and they actually took copyrights out for certain items. Not all of them were copyrighted, but some of them got a copyrights. So I'm out in the Library of Congress, and the Library of Congress has a wonderful online avenue to let you research what's copyrighted and what is not. I
Hmm.
mean, they've got 1964, 1965, 66, 67. They got all of these, and there's thousands of copyrights out there, and their data is very easy to search, makes it wonderful what you're looking for.
Hmm.
So as I'm out looking for some of these things, to look out there to see if the Ringo Rimco doll was actually copyrighted or the Flip Your Wig game was copyrighted.
Hmm.
I kept seeing all of these other items out in the copyright listing that said Beatles, 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 Beatles. And I
Hmm.
kept looking at these things thinking, what in the world are all this other stuff out
Uh-huh.
here that has copyrights on them? And I kept thinking to myself, when I'm done with the NIMS book, I will come back and revisit all of these things out there because I really had no idea. I think I'm a pretty good historian and all that, but some of these things I was reading, I had no idea what these things were that
Right.
were either Beatles or Beatles related. So I go out there and the my NIMS book is done, and I go out there and I start looking around. You just put the word Beatles out there in the Library of Congress and hit go. And in
Hmm.
1964 alone, here comes this big listing. And I'm thinking, my gosh. I'm thinking, well, there must be 100, 200 of these different things out there. I'll start taking notes about them and copying them, putting them
Uh-huh.
down, just kind of see what this is. Well, and as people know, I usually concentrate on the years 64, 65, and 66. That's kind of the years that I like to work with. It had all the wild and wacky NIMS items, so I kind of looked at the same thing here. So I'm
Hmm.
thinking there's a couple hundred of these things out there. And little did I know that when I started listing these copyrights out there, instead of being two or 300 of them, there was almost 900 of these copyrights just for 64, 65, and 66. And what I thought was going to be a simple little uh, paperback book that I could make and do this is there's a 3 volume set of these things now. These
Right.
things are over 400 pages each, 3 volumes listing all of the copyrights that was listed from 64 to 66. So I'm thinking, well, I try to put a disclaimer of what all these things are and what you read online one time. There
Hmm.
there were Beatles and Beatles related. copyrights for musical screenplays, lectures, spoken word writings, dolls, Beatles records, newspaper artwork, paintings, drawings, articles, toys, posters, albums, sculptures, jewelry, portraits, magazines, record cases, sheet music, novelty records, television scripts, newspaper cartoons, impromptu skits, books, photography, documentary scripts, satire, animation, cover records in French, Dutch, Spanish, and German, and more. And I'm thinking, this is a gold mine. I didn't even know this stuff existed out here. So
Uh-huh.
what I finally realized of what went on in this time period, as we all know, the Beatles were the hottest thing on the planet.
Hmm.
So you have all of these people, especially in 1964, you have all of these people who think, okay, I'm going to draw a picture of Paul McCartney in the Beatles and I'm going to have it copyrighted and someone's going to buy this thing and I'm going to make $1 million. Or
Hmm.
I'm going to make this novelty record, or I'm going to write this television script, or I'm going to make this sculpture, or I'm going to do anything like that. And
Right.
I will copyright it and make a bunch of money. And for the most part, they never did. But by golly, there is a legal document that says you took the time
Huh.
to do this and copyright this. And that's what I kept running into. And that's what the books are about. It lists all in chronological order. It lists all the Beatles copyrights and so you can see what happened the day after Ed Sullivan. You can see the December 1st, 1964. You can see what all people went out and thought they could do something with copywriting an item. It's unbelievable.
Sure. And just in the year 1964 alone, I mean, uh, we're going to be talking about novelty records. If that
Right.
wasn't the year to explode with novelty records, even though there were more that followed, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Everywhere you went, it was Beatles, Beatles, Beatles all over the radio. So there was so much reasoning behind releasing anything that you can make a buck off of.
Right. And here I have a statistic that I realized after I was doing this research. We say the Beatles were the hottest thing on the planet, fashion, records, culture, all this kind of stuff. And every now and then people go, "Well, how do you measure that?"
Mhm.
Yeah, they did all the records and all that, but how is that a measurable thing that you can do? So I've run across a statistic that I think pretty well sums up how hot the
Hmm.
Beatles were. For example, if you take 1964 and 1965 and 1966, Library of Congress, located in Washington, D.C., it's an office. You go in, you open the door, and you got to walk in. You got to do
Uh,
your stuff in there. All right, Library of Congress. There's 365 days a year. If you take out weekends and if you take out days, holidays, and you take out some other things, the Library of Congress is open about 240 days a year. Okay, that's what
mhm,
their doors are open. So if you take 3 years, 64, 65, 66, 240 times those 3 years means that the Library of Congress is open 720 days for those 3 years exactly. Okay.
mhm,
For those 3 years, there were 861 copyrights that were either Beatles or Beatles related. So think about this. Every day for 3 years, there was 1.2 people that copyrighted something. And I'm not talking February of 64. And I'm not talking about, before Christmas or whatever. Every single day for 3 years straight, on average, someone walked in the door and say, I've got this idea for a Beatle thing. I need it copyrighted. And once I start thinking about that, that just blows my mind that there's that much that happened out there. And of those 861 copyrights that were issued for those 3 years,
mhm.
300 of them were Beatle novelty records, which was
That's more
which
than
was
anything else.
more than anything else, which is just which is just nuts. But it kind of sums up the whole thing. It's just a fun time. It is a fun time. So there's there's right into Beetle Novelty Records, which was the hottest. You talk about another hottest thing on the planet was a Beetle novelty record.
Yeah, and I know in the case of my Beatles radio show, every little thing, every now and then I like to slip in a novelty record
Yeah,
because, some of them were decent, some of them were just god awful. But it just shows how much the Beatles were in everybody's conscience at that time.
exactly,
And
exactly.
certainly all the girls out there that, had some novelty record, what a dream it would be to meet one of them or to go on a date with them or one of the, so it's funny to listen to, but it also just shows you the extreme popularity, how big they were at that time.
Exactly. The first one, Dora Bryant. All I want, all I want for Christmas is a Beetle. That
Right.
was the first one that really came out, and that was even in December of '63. I mean, the Beatles hadn't even hit the United States yet. In fact, it was late November of '63 that the first one actually came out. So
And the Beatles sang it.
the Beatles
Beatles
sang
sang
it,
it on BBC Radio.
and they answered it because she said, "All I want for Christmas is a Beetle," and they sang back, "All we want for Christmas is a bottle." And that, so they were listening in. They were. So that set the stage for just hundreds and hundreds. Oh, and before we get going, Ken, I said there was 300 that were copyrighted between 64 and 66. There were 200 more that never were copyrighted. There was about 500 novelty songs in those 3 years that came out. And you know as well as I, these people writing these novelty songs, they go, "Oh, we got to do this quick. The Beatles are the hottest thing, but
Yeah.
next month they might be out, so we got to hurry up and get our novelty record out. We'll copyright it later
Uh-huh.
if we think it's going to go somewhere." So sometimes they didn't even bother to copyright it. They just did the record and threw it out. But there are 300 that have
So
the
those are
efficiency.
listed in the Library of Congress too?
No, no, I've
How
done
did you find out
research.
about those?
I have done research because that got me into this new project, and now that's what I'm working on is trying to find all 500, and I'm getting pretty darn close too. But it's a great subject matter to go after. It's just sometimes you go they're so bad they're good. Well, they're all good in some way or the other. they're they're all good.
You'll probably end up getting 499 of them, and then you'll go crazy because you won't be able to get that last one.
You got it. You got it. Well, and it also, and as well as it also people start saying, "Well, what do you think is a novelty record? What do you think?" Well, some of these you had a guest on not long ago that, and I can't remember his name, and I apologize. You'll be able to do it. Who showed you all those records by those bands that were covering Beatles songs, the Manchesters, and all these
Oh,
different.
Bob Koenig.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
And well, see, I don't really consider a novelty song if the Bugs play "I Want to Hold Your Hand." To me,
Right.
that's not a novelty record. That's just or the American Beatles covered "She Loves You." That's not a novelty record because that's a Lennon and McCartney song.
Right.
But you throw those in too, and my gosh, they were everywhere, Ken.
What do you consider like a medley? I mean, medleys are fairly common now, but when someone like Harry
Yeah.
Nilsson did You Can't Do That, and he used all these Beatles songs and he interwove them together, is that a novelty or is that a
Well,
tribute, or what
that
do you think of something like that?
that goes on my I'm right on my list right there. Does it go one way or the other? I
Yeah.
haven't made 100% yet. Now, the other kind like that are those goofy we'll call it not a call in, the invasion, where they talk about, well, today the Martians landed. What do you think about that, John? And
Oh
they
yeah.
play a Beatle record, or
Right.
and they do all that. Now that's kind of the precursor to all those other medley things that you talk about. I got no problem with those because somebody had to think, write the script, do all that for that. But those as you well know, those became really popular in those era too, and they always got to slip in a little Beatle things every now and then on those kind of
Yeah.
things.
Those are the Dickie Goodman like records,
Exactly,
what you think
exactly.
of.
Yeah.
How do you classify, say, the Chipmunks?
You
I mean,
know,
it's a novelty, but it's covering the Beatles.
it's the novelty, but it's covering the Beatles. So in my big list, is that a novelty song, a record? No, in my thing. But you have to include the Chipmunks. You know, the it because it's one of them that did so well. Uh, in fact, this thing, believe it or not, um, this thing won a Grammy award. Believe it or not, the Chipmunks won the Grammy. And give me just a second here.
That's
Uh,
that's
for
funny. Yeah.
it was the best mastered or something like that. But you know the David Seville that's on here, who is also the Ross Baghdad
Bagdasarian.
there. Yes,
Yeah.
I mean this guy is one. He's the one that gave us a few months, few weeks, a few years before this. He gave us the ooh ee ooh ah ah, ting ting wah bing bang. He's the same
Witch
guy with
Doctor.
the Witch Doctor.
Yeah.
And Ken, if I could, I got one more awesome trivia for you for right here, for this thing right here. Okay,
Okay.
here we go. And you may think I'm shifting gears, but I'll come back to you. Alfred Hitchcock movies, wonderful. They always had the little snippets in there where Alfred Hitchcock walked across the screen
Yeah.
somewhere. So it's like, where's Waldo, where's Alfred, and all that. In The Birds, Alfred Hitchcock walks across the front of the car at the windshield. You can see him walk by and all that. Okay,
Right.
in 1954. There is an Alfred Hitchcock movie called Rear Window.
Sure.
Jimmy Stewart and all that. Jimmy Stewart's looking at all the apartments across the street because he's up in the wheelchair, and it's like watching Hollywood Squares with everything going on in all the different apartments. One of
Hmm.
the apartments has a young songwriter. The songwriter is sitting at the piano all the time, and every time he looks at him, he's either on the piano or he's doing a little party there trying to get some ideas for his songs and all that. That's where Hitchcock on Rear Window comes in and does a little thing. He brings actually something and delivers to the songwriter there. And I wanted to show you something because you might not be able to see it very good. That's actually Hitchcock walking in
Yeah.
that scene on that. But Ken, you see that scene right there?
Yeah.
See the young songwriter sitting there in Rear
Right.
Window doing all that? Who was that?
David Seville.
You got it. That is another claim to fame for the Alvin and the Chipmunks guys. It's a great segue in there.
Well, talk about segues. There's magic in the air here because I live in Milford, Connecticut. And who do you think lived in Milford, Connecticut? David Seville.
There we
You
go.
know, a lot of the Chipmunks stuff started here, and then his son took it over later on. David Seville's long gone now, but the Chipmunks still continue to
Yeah.
this day, as far as I know, but from my hometown,
There
mine.
you there you go. It's always a small world with everything. Even Beetle Novelty records are a small world.
We're known for David Seville and Pez. You can't beat the two of them. So I think, yeah, we want to talk about these novelty records that you
Yep.
wanted to bring on. There's
Yep.
some that I thought were obvious that I thought we should bring up,
Okay.
and you know, a lot of people say, "Well, you got to bring up this one," but I'm sure there'll be some people who will still be surprised about the song "Ringo, I Love You."
Yeah. Yeah.
And
When you
yeah,
get this the even you get the 16-year-old Bonnie Jo Mason, who really is the first time that she's going to go behind the mic by herself
right,
to do a song. It was copyrighted in December of '64, and the song came out fine. If you listen to it, it sounds fine and all that. But the executives and everybody they were a little worried about the song because they said that Bonnie Jo Mason's voice was way too low. But that's how she sang, you know.
right,
So she had to go around with some of the executives to some of the radio places and all that to say, no, it's not a man singing Ringo, I love you to a man. It
right.
really is a female, and it's me and all that. And it didn't get too much playtime. I think really because of that is because of the stigma that surrounded that and everything. So,
Huh.
they tried it out. It did fine. In fact, you can see on there was a book out that said it actually was a flop, but I think it's fine. I think it's fine. So if you listen to Bonnie Joe Mason, do it. And then the rest of the story, of course, is Bonnie Joe Mason later on really is Cher and becomes the big superstar that she is. And it's these novelty records, Ken, as you know, these things have such uh, a background and who's on what. And say that again in front of those. That's what makes these things so cool. Bonnie Joe Mason, sure. But when you say, but that's Cher, it's like, oh, here we go.
Yeah. Not only that, well, first of all, it's not years later. 65 is when Sonny and Cher exploded, with I Got You
Yes.
Babe. So it was only the difference of what, half a year?
Yes.
Really?
Half a year.
Why did they choose that as her name? You have any idea?
I don't even
Hmm.
no, they changed her name. At that time, and they have a lot of these. Even a lot of these groups changed their names to see if it was do better or whatever. Some of these groups that did the Beatle novelty records, we know these groups now, but
Hmm.
back then they changed their name so in case it flopped, nobody could connect A to B on those things. And Bonnie Joe Mason may have been just another one of those things. Today, while you're recording this, Cher, you're going to be Bonnie Joe Mason, and that's what happened to a lot of these like that.
Do you happen to know, did Ringo ever hear the song?
I saw an interview. It wasn't too long ago. It was one of the famous Beatle interviews in early '64, or it was in '64, where they were interviewing the Beatles, and the interviewer brought up one of these obscure novelty songs, and of all things, they were interviewing Ringo. He says, "Oh, I've heard that," and you can hear Paul in the background go, "Oh, that's like," and he mentions another one, and George mentions another one. So, I think they could have very well heard a lot of these songs. I've never been able to see a or read a what they thought of them, but I gotta believe they've heard a bunch of these things.
Yeah. I can't believe, Cher must have run into the Beatles so many times, probably being Cher. At some point she probably said to Ringo, I recorded this song, it was, a tribute to you. But and also, this is very important about Ringo, I Love You. You talk about people surrounding songs.
Mhm.
First of all, Phil Spector produced the record.
Exactly.
And there's four songwriters that are listed on there. One of them is Vinnie Poncia,
Yeah.
who ended up writing with Ringo and producing Ringo. So, and
Exactly.
Pete Anders, who was his partner, the Vinnie Poncia and Pete Anders were in the Trade Winds in the 60s.
There you go.
It's a Lonely Town and all that.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty interesting that they're on that very same record, a song about Ringo. Vinnie Poncia was a writer, and he ends up working with Ringo.
It's some of these, and this is kind of like when I have so much fun with my NIM stuff. It's the background stories of the dolls in the games that are so interesting to me. And these novelty records have hit that same kind of subject matter with them. It's the background of these things that you just shake your head and you go, "Wow, wait, what?" Or this is really cool. What makes these things so cool?
Hmm. I wanted you to talk about Ringo for President.
Yep. Yep.
'Cause, there's a few different versions of that song.
There is the big one was the Young World Singers,
Right.
who did that. The copyrighted in August, and then it came out a little bit after that. That was for the Johnson Goldwater presidential race that was going on at that time. All these the fan clubs and everybody got together. Let's do Ringo for president. Rolf Harris did it, and that's the Rolf Harris uh, uh, sheet music right there when
Right.
he did it. Um, the Young World Singers. Was there just girls in the Young Girl Singers? No, there was three girls and three guys. One of the young ladies in the Young World Singers was Lynn Cornell. And you talk about a Beatle connection. Who was Lynn Cornell married to? But he was married to she was married to, I'm sorry, she was married to, hold on, I got Andy White, the drummer on Love Me Do when it first came
Wow.
out. So, there's another full circle like that. And I have the story about Ringo for president. I don't know if you've ever talked to uh, Debbie Glinder. Debbie's got the great book.
I
I
know
saw
of
them
her.
standing
Yeah.
there. Okay. Debbie went to the Ed Sullivan show and she seems to run into things all the time. She was president of the Beatles fan club around the New York area in 64. She got to do all kind of things. But if you ever talk to her, ask her about she she when she's a young girl in the New York area in 64 and with the stand club and everything, she gets asked to go on a local TV show in the New York area, and they were doing a special segment on Ringo for president, and Debbie had tickets that night for the Beatles when they were at the Forest Hill or Forest
Yeah.
Lawn when they came in on the
Forest
helicopter.
Hills,
Forest
good.
Hill, and they came in on
Forest
the
Hill.
helicopter. So Debbie, that afternoon, trying to hurry up, she's at this radio station, and she's the one during the Ringo for President segment. She's walking around the studio, holding up the sign, going Ringo for President. And she said all she could think about was, I got to get out of here so I can go see the Beatles. And she made it in time and all that. But that's a great story about her walking around with the placard and the sign about Ringo for president. Oh, and by the way, Ringo for President, the song, it was actually on Jukebox Jury over in the UK. Uh, and they've all the panel voted and everything, and man, it got voted a miss that day, so that's a bad. That's so. But I got one more thing
How could
about
they vote?
Ringo.
How could they give that a miss?
I
It's
know
in the
they
UK.
could. I know it. So Ringo for president. Okay, if you ever look, and this is obscure, but if you ever look in the old Billboard magazines from 64 and that kind of thing, they always told you the top 10 hits from around the world. And they would
Right.
tell you what the top 10 was in the UK, and the top 10 in Argentina, and the top 10 in Morocco, and all that kind of stuff. Well, if you look in December of 1964, Malaysia. What's the number one song? It's not a Beatles song. It's not a Stones song. It's not Billy J. Kramer, anybody. The number one song in December of 64 in Malaysia was Ringo for President. I, I got nothing else to say on that. Don't know how that happened.
They got good taste over there.
They got good tastes, right?
Now, I got to bring up this one song because every year, whenever I do a Beatles Christmas show and in my syndicated show, I put this song in there. And I even say this girl is immortalized now. I don't know a thing about her. Becky Lee Beck. And you actually sent me an article
Yep.
about when this record came out. I Want a Beatle for Christmas. So you want to tell me what you do know?
I know that
I
she
could
was
tell you beyond this article anyway.
okay. Well, I'll just tell you that she was 10.
Yeah.
And when she did that, the she had a massive Beatle collection in her house, and she was a young singer and all that, this
Hmm.
stage savvy and all that kind of stuff. And actually, what I don't know yet is why this happened, but a guy named John Sewer, who was the actual who ended up writing the song,
Hmm.
he came and visited Becky at her house and saw all the Beatles stuff and listened to her sing. And he goes, I'm going to write a Beatles song just for you. And this is what it was. So she from Columbus, Georgia,
Yep.
recorded it, and went out, was the big hit. And one thing that we talked about one time was you can't copyright the titles to Beatles songs. So in late November and December of 64, when people would say, we would love to hear I Want a Beatle for Christmas, that song.
Hmm.
Well, disc jockeys would have to ask, well, which one? Because there were five I Want a Beatle for Christmas songs out in December of 1964. All five different songs, but they all had the same title.
Wow. Well, I mean, that was the time to do it.
That was the
It's
time. Exactly.
ironic that it's all the same title there. So, do you have any of the other four?
I've got all the other four documented. of where they came from. Some of them I can't even find. I can't find any more uh, uh, copies of these. And that's some of the thing about the novelty records. Uh, if I write a novelty record and get it copyrighted, well, if I never bother to record it or whatever, it's gone forever. But by golly, the notation is out there that you did at one time
Uh-huh.
copyright a Beatle novelty song.
Now, all these songs that are novelty records, how many of them, percentage wise, would you say is on YouTube or even, Spotify even? I don't even know. I haven't checked Spotify. I'm always on YouTube. But I mean, is it really easy to find most of these or are a
If
lot of them really obscure?
if you go to Spotify or if you go to Apple Music or something like that, there are some out there. There's probably about 20 or 30 or maybe even 40. There's not as much as you would think. If you go to YouTube, you will find a lot more out there. You're talking about in the hundreds. If you know a list and you're looking for specific ones, a
Hmm.
lot of them are out there because now that I kind of have an idea of the listing, I can go out there and find them. They're obscure and sometimes they're very hard to find. But I've just been very impressed out on YouTube that many of them are out there.
Actually, I think most of the work is just finding out about these records that are obscure. And how do you just find out about
You know what? I started collecting lists, just like I did for my NIMS book. I just started
them? Uh-huh.
collecting lists of what people said and all this. And there's quite a number of people that have gone before me of trying to put some of these things together. So I'm trying to to put all of those together into one final listing. So I've got pretty good now.
Okay. There should just be a book solely on that,
Yeah.
separate from your book, just on the novelty records.
Well, Ken,
So,
we'll see what we can do about that. Okay.
okay. You're going to have to go past 1966. I'm sorry. There's a lot more to cover there. When I was about to, approach you on doing this, I had a number of songs that went beyond 1966, but can't really get into them right now. But save it for later.
Save it for later.
Okay. I also found out from that article, by the way, that Becky Lee Beck, her ultimate ambition, and she was 10 years old then, is to become a top recording star and to own a Thunderbird.
It's great, isn't it? Isn't it great?
I wonder if she's still, alive.
I'll have
If you
to
are,
look.
I want to hear from you, Becky.
Her I have interviewed a number of some of the people with the novelty records. I haven't crossed paths with her yet, but I have interviewed a number of those. So they're still around and they're excited that anybody will even remember that these things were out there.
We got to get Becky at the fest.
Exactly.
She'll be the headliner. She was 10 years old then.
Yep,
She's what, 70 now? 70.
exactly.
Okay. Oh, by the way, this is my CDR copy, but I'm sure you've seen
Exactly.
Beatlemaniacs.
Yes.
So a lot of the songs that I would want to question you about are on here, but one of them, which I found interesting when I got this collection, was from Sonny Curtis,
Yep.
"A Beetle I Want to Be," which is a
Yep.
very good song too.
Which a very good song, original member of the Crickets. And if you looked, if I don't know if they've even listed it there, the copyright on A Beatle I Want to Be is January 24th, 1964. It's a good 2 or 3 weeks
Yeah.
before they even come to the USA. So how much of a forethought is that he's already thinking that much ahead about that and to get on that. And one of the I mean, you get that song just drips of coolness.
Yeah.
Lou Adler was the co-writer and went on to all his Hollywood Walk of Fame and all his stuff like that. But if you listen in that song, there's two people in the background that you will be listening to. One on the guitar is a young Glenn Campbell, and
Hmm.
one of them is on the keyboard, which is a young Leon Russell.
Hey, they were the ultimate studio musicians at the
Exactly.
time. So
Exactly. How cool is that? Hey,
if
he
those
even,
people who were on so many sessions, it's like if there's a list that you could read, it's kind
yeah,
of like all the the great songwriting teams and the Brill building and all that and what they wrote. You can't believe there's so much that they're on. But yeah, Glenn Campbell was on so much. Leon Russell was on so much.
Yeah. Hey, Sonny Curtis, he even brought back Jerry Allison of the Crickets and Tommy Alsop of the Crickets to play on that song. So you got rock and roll royalty all over that song, "A Beetle I Want to Be," a couple weeks before they even hit it.
Okay, very cool. All right, also got to bring up "We Love You, Beatles."
Yeah, that's there's this to me there's the almost the gold standard on that one.
Yeah,
And one of the things that that we talk about on that one, the gold standard is I think it was and it always depends on uh which are you looking at, Billboard chart or other
yeah,
charts about that time? That was got up to about 36, 30, 38, something like that.
yeah,
That was quite a bit. We Love You Beatles. But of course, that was from the hit movie and play at that time, Bye Bye Birdie, had We Love You Conrad
right.
was that. So, a little they moved the lyrics around a little bit, We Love You Beatles, and it becomes a massive hit, whether it's uh, the Trixies or whoever it is trying to sing that song
Mm.
to the Carefrees.
The
Uh,
Carefrees.
the
Yeah.
Carefrees is the ones that did it. It's just amazing. You can't. It's if you listen to Bye Bye Birdie and you hear that, you go, that's catchy, that's going somewhere, and it
Right.
did when they put the Beatles on there.
Yeah. I hope they made good money with it because I'm sure they had to pay for the rights of the melody.
Exactly.
So it's not a completely original song in that regard, but
Right. Right. Exactly.
hmm. Okay. I don't know how I had a copy of this when I was a little kid, but I have the 45 of it, and you can look it up on YouTube. The Boy with the Beetle Hair
Yeah. By the
by the
Swans.
Swans.
Mhm.
What
That
can you
one,
tell us?
believe it or not, that one was another one that was January 30th, 64. That's so they're getting these things ready to go before the Beatles even hit. I saw where Billboard magazine said it was a bright teen dance item with a group of gals singing the praises in light bossa nova type beat. That's what they said about that.
Doesn't
It,
sound like bossa nova to me.
no, it doesn't. And that one back on the charts and all that, got up
Yeah.
to like 99, 98 or something. By God, it broke the top 100. So it's a good little catchy song, and it just sticks in your head all the time when you listen to that thing.
And to be able to write these songs so quickly, even if they're very simple, that still takes a lot
Yeah.
to be able to come with it. And I was looking online at this song, and it had one of the writers listed as Kenneth Gamble. And I'm wondering if that's from Gamble and Huff. There's Kenneth Gamble from
I
Gamble and
see
Huff. I
that.
don't know if
Yes.
it's the same one, but
Yeah, that I don't know. And I'm finding out a lot of these people are the same. Yes. Every now and
yeah,
then somebody throws one in that says, "Oh, that's not this one." But you could I've not gone that deep into it, but I've got Gamble as a writer also.
right. Yeah. One of the great songwriting teams for people that don't know, a lot of the
Ex
great soul stuff from the 70s, the OJs, Harold Melvin and the Blue
yeah.
Notes.
Hey, Ken, I want to change one thing. When I said a while ago, Lynn Cornell, who was married to Andy White,
Yeah.
she was actually on We Love You Beatles. I had the wrong one that
Okay.
was on there. So I just want to make sure. I want that disclaimer out there.
Okay. There's a lot to store up here.
There's a lot to store.
And one of the great things about going on YouTube is you look up one novelty record, and then in the corner there's a whole bunch of other songs there. Some of them you may not have heard at all. And I
Exactly.
just discovered "Waiting for Paul to Call."
Yep. Eileen
Aline
Francis.
Francis, who
Yeah.
know anything about her?
I interviewed her for my copyright book,
Okay.
and she was 17 when she wrote the song. The song was for Paul McCartney, is who she wrote it for. And but here we are again. Her real name is really Helene Francis, but of course the producer or her manager said we don't think that'll look very good on the 45 label, so they changed her to Eileen. Somehow they thought that was better than Helene, is what it is. And she told me This was on Roulette Records. She told me she was just about to go out on Roulette Records. You know how they had the cavalcade of stars or whatever, where they'd all get
Uh-huh.
on the bus and drive around and perform. She was about to make that, which would have made this a bigger hit song by getting to go out and PR it like that.
Right.
And she got married. And when the producer, or when the president of the label found out that she got married, they wouldn't let her go on the on the tour bus. So she missed out. You know, she got married and everything's fine, but she missed out on really promoting the song that much because they didn't want the young married lady to go out on tour with them.
It's kind of like Brian Epstein wanting no one to know that John was married.
Exactly.
You know, Helene suffered the same fate.
She did.
Talk about some of these people that you've interviewed and which ones you found to be the most interesting.
The I talked to oh my gosh. There's a song called I Want to Be a Beetle. It sounds a lot like the ones we talked about a while ago.
Right.
I Want to Be a Beetle, recorded in 1964 by the Unbeatles. Okay, that was their hit. Uh, couple weeks out, things like that. Well, who was in the Unbeatables but a young Gene Cornish, who went on later to be on the Rascals.
Uh-huh.
Okay, Gene has I talked to him about this song. He has a wonderful story. So you put out the Beatle novelty records, which 99% of them didn't do anything. So they had this song out. They were playing regularly at the Peppermint Lounge and all that. And uh, the song went nowhere, so all that. So they got a call from their manager, and their manager said, "You know what? We're going to go. I booked all you guys, the band. We're going to go to Puerto Rico. We got 2 weeks to go to Puerto Rico and just tour around there to also, the Peppermint Lounge. We're here and playing." So they did. They get off the plane at Puerto Rico. And Gene told me let me make sure I read this right. Gene told me there were about 2,000 kids at the airport. And so the guys from the Unbeatables are getting off going, "What's this?" Well, it was for them. He said it was just like Hard Day's Night. The
Uh-huh.
kids were screaming and all that. And they were following them once they got in the limousines. They go to the hotel and they're hiding in the clothes chute and they're hiding in the elevators and behind the chairs. And they're trying to get in to see all that. And everywhere they go to play, this "I Want to Be a Beatle" song, which is played everywhere. They do these shows. There's like 15 shows, and one of the shows sold out a 10,000 seat athletic stadium where the kids were going bananas, chasing them down the streets and everything like that. And he said it was unbelievable, as we
Yeah.
might say. And he said their 2 weeks were up. They were wonderful. They get back on the plane, fly back to New York. They get off the plane. Nobody. They're back. They're back to reality, and they're back playing their places that they play. And it was like it never happened, but it did happen. He said it was an amazing 2 weeks, and it all because of a Beatle novelty record.
Maybe some of those fans got confused and thought it would be the Beatles because it sounded like them. I don't know.
That may be the closest, that they were going to get. So it was very interesting. Hey, and I got another one, a novelty record, it said Beatles, Please Go Home by Byron Lee and the Dragonaires. Uh, it's a ska, Jamaican ska and all that. And
Mhm.
Byron Lee was they were a big deal with their ska music and all that in '64 and all that. So it's a catchy tune. If you ever want to listen to a ska recording of a Beatle novelty record, go to that. But Byron Lee has even a cougar tie in here that I like. This was in '64. Well, in '62, if the next time you turn on the James Bond movie Dr. No. Right
Uh-huh.
at the beginning of Dr. No, James Bond is at this nightclub outdoors, and this girl is trying to take pictures of him, and he doesn't appreciate this and all that. And the scene unfolds at the nightclub where Bond wants to film and all that kind of stuff. Well, while that scene is going on, the camera pans around the nightclub and everything, and who is on stage playing Jump Up, one of the big Jamaican and worldwide songs at that time, but
Uh,
Byron Lee and the Dragonaires are in the James Bond Dr. No movie 2 years before they get the Beatle novelty records. And if you watch that scene, and I've seen this on YouTube, just that scene, if you watch it,
yeah.
the camera will pan around and the nightclub owner is actually walking around because Bond's making such a mess around the place. And the nightclub owner actually stops in front of the band and whispers something into the bass player. Well, that's Byron Lee right there that he's talking to. So take a look at that sometime, and you'll get to see another Beatle novelty record crossover like
All
that.
right. I'll have something to think about when Dr. No is concerned because I remember
Exactly.
seeing Dr. No when I was a little kid
Yep.
in the movie theater. And the one thing that scared the hell out of me from watching that movie, you probably can guess. It's a scene in there where James Bond is in bed and there's the tarantula that's going up.
Yes. Exactly.
And
It's
that stayed with me for
yep.
every time I went visiting in a hotel room, I'd look underneath the bed sheets. I didn't.
I get it. I get it. Hey, and I got one more for you. And
Yeah.
you know what? Just because of you, I will go past 66 for just a moment. The next time you're out on YouTube, pull up a Beatle novelty song called John, You Went Too Far This Time.
I
And
was
it's
going to
by
ask you about that. Yeah.
okay, it's by a young singer named Rainbow. And it's Rainbow and the writers of the song didn't like the John Lennon and Yoko Ono when they're naked on the cover of the 45 or the album. What is it?
Two virgins.
The Birds when that one. So they thought, okay, John, you went too far this time. So it's a whole novelty record about how John crossed the line and all that kind of stuff. Well, Rainbow, the young singer on that uh, record, she must have decided afterwards that singing was really not what she probably should do in life. Maybe she should pick another avenue, and she liked the arts and stuff like that. So a few years later, Rainbow changed her name to Sissy Spacek, and you got Carrie singing the Beatles novelties. You went too far this time. The actress Sissy
Yes.
Spacek.
What
It's
a great
it,
actress.
it's one of those things, and all I can think of is she's singing "John, You Went Too Far" this time, and then you look at the picture of Carrie on stage at the with the blood all over her during the dance and all that. You're thinking, well, some people could say you went too far though this time. So it's just always these things like that are just so interesting how these things happen.
Just think of Sissy Spacek's eyes staring, and about to move things, how weird she looked.
I agree.
Played,
I agree.
she played that role perfectly.
She did. She did. And all I can do now is think of rainbows in that.
And that's Rainbow without a W.
That's rainbow without a W is right.
Okay. Um, you sent me an email, one song that I didn't know about, but I listened to it on YouTube, which is funny. Is Beatles song by Dick Pillar.
How about that?
Pilar? Is it Pilar? Pilar?
I think it sounds better if it's Pilar. I
Okay.
think that's what it is.
And Polka Style,
Polka
Beatles
style.
novelty.
You know, and my the thing I realized really quick as I was going through this, the Beatles are rock and roll. So you think, well, the novelty records are all rock and roll. No, far from it. You got country, you got spoken word, you've got jazz, you've got ska, you've got all these different types of genres of music. And here we go, you got a polka. And you know what, our listeners today, just sometime go out and listen to Beatles song by Dick Pillar on polka. If you want almost the ultimate Beatle novelty record in polka, hey, this guy wins all kind of polka band of the year and all
Yeah.
these great accolades and all that. And that's another one, this guy stepped away from his normal probably what they did songs about,
Right.
and now he's immortalized, but in his little genre, this guy is big time. So yeah, take a look out there and listen to that.
Okay. When I was looking on YouTube, somebody wrote in saying that he's still around and he lives in Connecticut. So he might be right next door to me. I don't even know it.
we'll keep looking for it. And I bet he's still got some polka in him right now.
Well, once it's in you, you don't get rid of it.
You're
Like
right.
Beatles music. You know.
Good point. Very good point.
Any other novelty records that really stand out for you that you'd like to talk about?
There are just so so many. You
Mhm.
know what? And you know how you get the record collectors and they go out and they look for acetates. Okay, oh, I've got the
Mhm.
acetate of this or this Beatle record, and which is a good thing. Well, is that what I go looking for? No, Ken. I go looking for acetates. I want a Beatle for Christmas, right there. And
Uh-huh.
believe it, this is not the I Want a Beetle for Christmas that you and I just talked about a while
Right.
ago. This is another one of those five. This is the acetate of the one from Gill Music. This was from the Fans. That's who did that song right there. So there's even acetates of Beatle novelty records that are out there. It's just it's something. And
You've also got to get them in demo form first before you get the finished product.
exactly. And like there was a young guy named Brad Berwick. So of course his song is going to be I'm Better Than the Beatles. Well,
Right.
and they were Clinton Records and they did what a campaign and they did
Yeah.
for him to try to get him out there and to see if his new release I'm Better Than the Beatles and it didn't go anywhere, but by God, they got a great poster for this. Hey, Ken, I was going to tell you, I read an article once from the Bugs. The Bugs was a Beatle novelty record
Right.
uh, uh, group. Okay, the guy, the leader of the Bugs, said he saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan on that Sunday night,
Hmm.
February 9th. Okay, the next morning he wrote a Beatle novelty song, which was Monday. Tuesday, he went and took it to his band, and they learned the song on Tuesday. Wednesday, they went into the studio and they recorded this new Beatle novelty song.
Hmm.
Thursday, they went and did even little bitty things that they had to change on it, or they improvised and made it just to sound a little bit better. Friday, they decided on the label that they were going to put on it, and they pressed the 45s and they pressed the labels down and all that. And by Saturday, they were out in the local Woolworth store in their local area. That is a Beatle novelty song right there.
Right.
And the average shelf life of a Beatle novelty record was 2 weeks.
Hmm. Was there any traction at all on the less, what was his name? Chadwick? The one that you just, I'm better than the Beatles.
No,
Did
zero.
it, was there any town anywhere in the US that played it?
No, like they had the management company in Los Angeles. So I will guess that the local Woolworths or the Ben Franklin store or whatever it was had this song on their in their 45 bin as you go along. Hey, even Cher said, uh, let me find where she said. Even Cher said that in her local town was the only place that really, for about a week, you could find Ringo, I Love You. And after that, it even disappeared from those shelves also. So, if you're looking for the novelty record, you had to look quick back then.
Yeah. I wonder if Cher has ever sung the song live in front of an audience.
That is a great question. I can't find, I've been looking on YouTube and everything. I've been looking for her to singing that song and I can't find it yet. But it's just, you know, uh, I'll give you real quick. There was a guy, I can't think of which one it which song it was. Uh, Beetle Crawl or something like that. There was a guy named Fred Ebb who was a songwriter, and in
Oh yeah,
'64
Dandruff
he
Ebb.
yeah, he decides to do a Beatle novelty record, and it doesn't go anywhere and flop and all that. But later on, Fred Ebb wins all these Grammys and everything like that because he write not only does he write the music to Chicago, and not only does he write the music to Cabaret, but he writes this other song where the first line is "Start spreading the news." He writes "New York, New York," but then you get your start on a
Yep,
Beatle novelty record.
right. They were a great songwriting team.
Yes, very much so. Oh,
Very close with Liza Minnelli, as you probably know.
yep. And sometime have your listeners go out to YouTube and find get my ladybug get away from that beetle bug. That it's out there. It was never released, and you go, well, why should I go look for that? It's never even released. Well, you can listen to it because who wrote it? Motown wrote it. Holland Dozier Holland wrote that song. So they're everywhere.
Would you happen to know, because I guess 2 years ago I interviewed Don Daneman of The Circle,
Yeah,
and I had read that The Circle recorded a tribute to the Beatles. Oh, no, 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 I'm sorry. Forgive me. It was a tribute to John after he died. So
I see.
here we
I
go.
see. Yeah. Yeah.
And
So
Don, I think, didn't know if he could find any copies of that. He didn't really want to talk about it, but yeah, there's probably so many that we don't know from famous people or semi-famous people.
oh
So
yeah. My and I but, just one more before we go. There's a song called "I Want to Marry a Beetle." It's from a 1965 um, movie, one of those beach movies. It was written by Carol Connors. Carol Connors, who's Carol Connors? Well, in the late 50s, when the black and white screen comes on and you see Phil Spector and the teddy bears there, right in the center is the young lady singing, "To know him is to love, love, love him." That's
right.
Carol Connors. Carol Connors goes on to date Elvis. Carol Connors goes on to talk about uh, all kind of beach movies and all. And Carol Connors later on writes this little song called "Gonna Fly Now," the theme from Rocky, and she goes on to songwriting fame and everything like that.
Yeah.
But even her has a 1965 Beatle novelty song.
See, all those people, they know where it's at.
They know where it's
You
at.
know, the magic of the Beatles rubs off on them.
It is, and that's one of the things about this that I love so much. It's finding those backstories, finding those people that were in them, some the ones that are still around. But I love to talk about this stuff, and I'm still going to try to find more of them. But yeah, it's and even though the average shelf life was 2 weeks, my God, they're out there. They made a contribution, and they're just so cool.
I'm kind of surprised considering that the Beatles were the biggest thing in the US in 64 and really the 60s, but certainly in 64 that some of these songs didn't do better. Maybe it's because there were so many of them coming out all at once. I don't
I
know.
think that might have been it. And one of the things about the copyright book is you can really tell on the graph of life, boy, the Ed Sullivan show hits, everybody's got an
Yeah.
idea. After that, everybody's going to paint a picture or make a drawing or do a sculpture or something and go get it copyrighted because I can and I'm going
Uh-huh.
to make some money off of it.
So tell the folks, because you have three chapters now. You can order each one individually, or can you order all three as one, or how does that work?
You can do both on my site, which is fabgear.company, or on the Imagine and Wonder site.com, which I like also. You can buy the set or you can buy them one at a time. They're in hardback. They came out really good.
Hmm.
But they're just, and it's one of those things that, and I say this because I'm one myself. It's one of those things that if you're the ultimate Beatles guru and you know everything that you thought whatever existed, I guarantee you will find something in here that
Hmm.
you didn't know that someone copyrighted a Beatles song or novelty song or made something and put it out there and that you did not know existed before.
Okay, well, you have any plans to go from 1967 on?
You get I might, but once you know, and but I think about the White Album, and I think about the all the Yellow Submarine stuff that's out there and everything like
Uh-huh.
that, and I can already tell you that there's hundreds and hundreds of copyrights from 67 on.
Yeah.
There's just hundreds, and when the Beatles maybe start copywriting things even before they broke up. They might copyright things that will be coming later on like that. They get an idea, so they go ahead and do something. It's just it's mind boggling. And I've been, so I have to rest for a little bit while my eyes get focused again after looking at the Library of Congress stuff for so long. But
Okay.
you never know. But the novelty records, that's already in the works because that is such a cool subject.
Yeah. And your three books combined are over 1,000 pages.
Over 1,000 pages, almost 12 over actually over 1,200 pages, and it was just a labor of love. Just that I kept, and I readily admit that when I was getting to the end of the research, I would hope someday, please don't let me find another Beatles copyright. And I would. It just when I thought I was done, I would just kept finding more. So it just adds to that unbelievable idea that all of these people went out and did stuff like that.
Well, I sure am glad that you went through all these lengths because nobody has gone to this extreme. And we thank you for that. I
Well,
just ask that, the next time you put out a book that's like 1,000 pages or more, don't put it out the same year as the McCartney Legacy book, or when you find out when Mark Lewison's next book is coming out, don't put it out that year.
I will do that.
Let me just have room for the other books. That's all. That's all I ask
I,
for.
I will make sure that you have shelf space for these.
All right. Well, Terry, this has been wonderful, and we'll have you on again. We'll cover some other aspect
Okay.
of it that you've got in the book because there's so much ground to cover. And it's great to have you here.
Again,
Thanks for being on my
I
channel.
always appreciate it. You do such a wonderful job out here with you getting out in the beautiful world. We love it, and everyone is so appreciative of what you do. So anytime,
Okay. And I'm not going to rest till I get all 5 copies of I Want a Beetle for Christmas. Now I have a mission. It's
I will
all your
send you.
fault.
I will send you the list really soon.
All right. Thanks to all of you
All
for
right.
watching. Thanks to all of my new subscribers. It means so much to me to have my audience keep growing here. And we'll see you very soon. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.